First, I drew a grid with charcoal because I knew that charcoal wouldn't cause problems with the technique I planned to use. Then I roughed in the design, only giving myself some reference points to then draw it out properly in Sharpie. For the walls, I mixed a few specific colors, and also used raw sienna and burnt umber on their own. After brushing on a light base color, I dry brushed with another color to begin building up texture. Then I used a wooden block to drag on paint for another textured effect. Then I spattered a few different colors and whisked most of it with a brush or the wood block. I repeated the same techniques for the other side, using my reference photo as a guide. This side was more aged and crumbling, so it also had cracks and chunks missing in the plaster. I used 3 brushes, a sash, a fitch, and a chip brush, and I didn't clean them that often. Having a brush with a blend of the yellow colors helped soften any texture that appeared too harsh. The crumbling plaster created an opportunity for a mini trompe l'oeil. Adding a little shadow created the illusion of depth. Then I went back to the first side to add a crumbling area of plaster, which I wet blended and dabbed with my fitch brush for texture. Unfortunately, my camera died, so I don't have a full close-up of the process, but you get the idea. For the door, I added a little water into the base color so that the permanent marker would be able to show through and I wouldn't lose my lines. Then with a slightly darker color, I again used a wooden block to block on some texture and also dry brushed some areas for more texture. Next, I applied some washes of golden yellow, lemon yellow, burnt sienna, and the base yellow color to help push the saturation and contrast of the colors. It was applied here and there, and I softened the edges with water. Next, I started to add shade to the door, which was the door base color with more Payne's gray. Before applying the paint, I brushed on some water to help the shade feather out. I had 2 brushes, one for applying color and a water brush to blend and feather the paint. I used white for a little highlight, but because the door was already such a light color, I didn't put the highlight everywhere it technically should go. The shade and shadow were more important for creating depth, so I spent more time on that. Then I painted in the keyhole and door handles, which were again an opportunity for a mini trompe l'oeil. And as a side note, I have questions for the carpenter who screwed on these door handles. They are so off-center. For the shadow, I made 2 colors, one for shadows on the yellow walls and another for shadows on the door. I'll explain in a moment why there are 2. As I applied the shadow on the wall, I sprayed the muslin with water so that it would both soften the shadow edges and prevent an area from drying too soon. If parts had dried, the overlapping areas would be too dark and would look weird and brushy. When the wall shadow started to dry a little but was still rather wet, I added some burnt sienna in areas for darker shadow. When I added the shadows to the door, I sprayed it with a little water to give me more open time, but not as much water as on the walls, because I didn't need the edges to be as soft. Many of the shadows on the door gave an opportunity to show how shadow warps as it hits an uneven surface. Though, don't study what I did too closely, I did mess up a little. As for why I made two colors, in general, the rule is the shadow color is the complementary color of the light source. A warm highlight should have a cool shadow. However, you don't have to tie yourself to that. It is more of a guideline and rule of thumb. When I looked at my reference photo and did some samples, I decided it wouldn't look as good if I used the same shadow color for both the door and the walls. But I did use Payne's Gray in both of them because I wanted there to be something to connect them. Then I deepened the shadows in some areas of the door using a mixture of both shadow colors. The combination created more of a black color, and I liked the idea of using them together. Incorporating colors from one area of the painting into another can help tie it together. The advantage of combining these colors together, besides helping tie it together, is that the black is more interesting and has a different depth than if I just used straight black. The top left shadow area was also quite dark in the reference photo, so I used both shadow colors there as well. I hope you found the techniques in this video helpful. Let me know what you think or any ideas for future videos.